Nicola Sturgeon, is to resign as First Minister of Scotland.
Humza Yousaf, Kate Forbes and Ash Regan, the three people vying to replace the dominant figure in Scottish politics, Nicola Sturgeon.
Kate Forbes, she is the favourite to succeed from Nicola Sturgeon, but she is controversial as a figure, isn't she?
Well, the contest to replace Nicola Sturgeon as Scotland's First Minister has been a pretty nasty affair, especially for one candidate in particular. The devout Christian, Kate Forbes, was ahead of her rivals until she revealed her views on gay marriage and a couple of other issues. Many of her own Scottish Nationalist Party colleagues turned on her, and so did a good chunk of the press. Some of them even said that given her views, she shouldn't even be allowed to stand for public office. A pretty extraordinary demand, given that Scotland's Christian roots go back 1,500 years. Now, we're going to be hearing from our panel a little later in the programme, quite a diverse set of views. But first, here's what you need to know about what's going on in Scotland.
The Finance Secretary, Kate Forbes, was in the Cairngorms yesterday to set out her priorities after facing controversy last week following her comments on same-sex marriage.
You've said that you would have voted against gay marriage.
In this country, equal marriage is a legal right, and I am a servant of democracy.
I'm sick of people hiding behind any kind of religion to justify their homophobia.
It's such a complete car crash, and how she thought she would get away with this, I don't know.
As a practicing Christian, I can tell you what I practice, which is that marriage is between a man and a woman. My faith would say that sex is for marriage.
One thing about Kate Forbes, I mean, her religion is in her DNA. She was brought up in India. Her parents were missionaries. I mean, she really is a deeply religious person.
I've obviously made a statement last week, which I stand by. But I've probably answered more questions on religion and marriage in a matter of days than most people do in a lifetime.
Richard Lochhead, we can't have a party leader who'd vote against same-sex marriage. He's dropped you as well. Is your campaign over before it's really begun?
Absolutely not.
I would have thought it's sort of written off her leadership campaign.
When it comes to my job, frankly, I couldn't care less what two consenting adults do in the comfort of their own bedroom or wherever it is.
If you're First Minister, will that legislation on banning all conversion therapy go ahead?
I've already stated that I think conversion therapy is abhorrent, that coercion is abhorrent, and that I will continue to support banning conversion therapy.
Isn't the reason you're losing SNP support is because, as that exchange with Beth has shown, you're not able to give a really straight answer to a really straight question on our progressive agenda, and that's going to lose our support.
For me, it would be wrong according to my faith. But for you, I have no idea what your faith is. So, in a free society, you do what you want. It's the same with a number of other points you're probably going to come on and ask me. I go to church on a Sunday. I'm not sitting here saying to you, you need to be going to church on a Sunday.
I think she can believe whatever she wants.
Thank you, and Kate Forbes.
It's time for change. Continuity won't cut it. Well, Humza, you've had a number of jobs in government. When you were Transport Minister, the trains were never on time. When you were Justice Minister, the police were strained to breaking point. And now, as Health Minister, we've got record high waiting times. What makes you think you can do a better job as First Minister?
How are you going to deliver independence if the public don't have confidence in you?
On this platform, I'm probably the only person that's gone head-to-head with Rishi Sunak and won. The question for me is, who do our opponents fear? I believe I'm the candidate that our opponents fear.
Our exclusive poll shows Kate Forbes, whose campaign many thought had imploded last month, is now leading amongst the general public, and among SNP voters is neck and neck with the self-styled continuity candidate, Humza Yousaf.
Continuity won't cut it. And poll after poll shows that I'm the most trusted to govern Scotland well and to govern for all of Scotland.
Well, the poll showed that she was the most trusted by Scots in general, that is. Around 30% of them want her as the next First Minister, according to the 4 polls commissioned just before voting started on the 13th of March. Well, that's 10 points clear of Humza Yousaf on 20% and Ash Regan on 10%. But This contest is not decided by the general public, it's decided by members of the Scottish Nationalist Party, and they prefer Humza Yousaf by a margin of 6 points. Well, those are the dry numbers. Now let's hear from the people themselves. And this week we sent our producer, Salahuddin, to Edinburgh to ask those awkward questions.
What do you think about Kate Forbes' Christian beliefs? Compatible with Scottish democracy?
She's great.
Right. And do you think she'll be better than Nicola Sturgeon?
Oh, definitely, definitely, no doubt.
Well, I think she's reflecting Scottish tradition.
Scottish tradition.
Yeah,
because
Presbyterianism, because I think she's better being committed to her faith and being honest about it than trying to. Some of them are like playing it down.
What she said was that she's very tolerant of all faiths and everybody, and other people's decisions to do what they want to do. Nothing to do, so that doesn't make her bad or good or otherwise, it just means she's tolerant of all faiths.
Would you like her to become Scotland's First Minister?
I don't think any of the three of them are good enough for that, but she shouldn't be ruled out on religious grounds. She has a right to those views.
Probably harder than the other two. Certainly not Yousaf. Useless Yousaf's not got a clue, is he? Failed in every single position, so how do you expect him to actually take care of the affairs of Scotland?
Not sure, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who do you think will win the position of Scotland's First Minister?
Hopefully not Kate Forbes.
Religious beliefs should have no part in politics.
Right, because Kate Forbes, she's expressed her Christian beliefs that she would have voted, for example, against gay marriage, abortion. Do you think that's compatible in Scotland's democracy? No.
Not at all, man. 21st century, innit?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great that she has her beliefs, and if she lives her life, that she shouldn't impose her beliefs on others that maybe don't have the same beliefs.
Do you think that whoever becomes Scotland's First Minister can match Nicola Sturgeon?
No.
No.
No. She's a business. She shouldn't have left.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have left.
Are Kate Forbes' Christian beliefs compatible? She's a
cow.
I see. So you wouldn't want her to become First Minister?
Absolutely not. No.
Do you think she'll be better than Nicola Sturgeon? 100%. Okay. And would you like her to be Scotland's First Minister?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Our producer Salahuddin there looking rather happy to be out of London for once. Anyway, you'll have heard someone in that report talking about useless Yousaf. He refers, of course, to Humza Yousaf, Scotland's Health Secretary. He's the country's first South Asian minister and is a practicing Muslim. He says he supports gay marriage and would not legislate based on his faith.
I believe in equal marriage. I believe that people's marriage, if they are gay and they are married, that their marriage is no less, is no more inferior or less, is worth less than my marriage. I don't use my faith as the basis for legislating. I don't think that's what people want their legislators to do. They want their legislators to do what is in the best interests of the country, and I will continue that progressive agenda that Nicola Sturgeon has started and has built over the last 8 years.
Well, Humza Yousaf says he supports gay marriage, but his critics point out that he missed the final vote on legalising it back in 2014.
I had an unavoidable meeting, as you know, involving a Scot who was on death row in Pakistan for blasphemy, and we were desperately trying to get him released. Thankfully got him released, but my views have never changed.
I was contacted 10 days or so before the vote, when the vote was known, and told that Humza was arranging a ministerial appointment. The assumption was there was pressure, there's a lot of religions. Well, a lot of religions were canvassing and opting. There's no secret that there was that.
And Alex Salmond's former colleague, the former Health Secretary Alex Neil, alleged that Mr Yousaf had asked to skip the final vote due to pressure from a mosque. In one interview, Mr Neil stated that the meeting had been arranged deliberately to give him cover for the timing of the vote. An accusation, of course, that Humza Yousaf firmly denies. Let's bring in our guests now. And in Scotland, we have Ian Lawson and Judith Duffy. Ian served on the SNP's national executive during the 80s and 90s and believes Kate Forbes has been treated rather unfairly. Judith Duffy is the chief political reporter at the Sunday National, which supports Scottish independence and has interviewed Kate Forbes on a number of occasions. And we're also joined by Mohammed Amin in Manchester. He's the former chairman of the Conservative Muslim Forum, and he believes that Kate Forbes really has no business running for office. Welcome to all three of you. Ian, if I may start with you, you feel that Kate Forbes has been treated unfairly. Why is that?
Well, I think it's as much stupidly as unfairly, because the reaction in Scotland wasn't what her accusers intended, because every poll since has shown Kate Forbes well in the lead when it comes to the public's ratings of who they would like to see as the next leader. I also think tactically it was absolutely stupid. About 20% of Scotland profess a faith. And, you know, to say to 20% of Scotland you're unfit to hold public office because you hold a faith is absolutely ridiculous and the worst possible political tactics. Stupid.
Mohammed, I mean, I think you've got an answer for that, haven't you?
Yes, well, let's be precise. I'm not saying that Kate Forbes isn't free to run for office, and she's free to hold whatever religious views she wants. If she believes that homosexuality is a sin as a committed Christian, that's fine. What is not fine is when she sets out to impose her religious views on Scottish society. She's made it very clear that she would not have voted for equal marriage for people who are either heterosexual or homosexual, and she has no rational argument in favour of that other than her own religious beliefs, and I think that is wrong.
Mohammed, that vote was a vote of conscience, so she was free to vote as her conscience decided. It's not imposing on other people, it's just voting in the way that she feels is moral and correct.
No, a conscious vote is a vote where each politician, each member of the parliament is free to vote as they wish rather than being whipped by their party. But they have to vote in the interests of the population as a whole. They're not in parliament to impose their religious beliefs on other people.
Perhaps she feels that it was in the interests of the population as a whole.
I'd like her to explain how she thinks it's in the interest of homosexual people not to be allowed to marry.
Well, it contravenes her faith, and it contravenes the Muslim faith as well, and a number of other faiths.
Precisely, she's seeking to impose her religious beliefs on other people by view of her political position.
But presumably people subscribe to these faiths because they believe they are a very good way to lead their lives, no?
Absolutely, and I'm a Muslim myself. I have never practiced homosexuality. I have never had sex with any other person than my wife after we got married, because I believe strongly that sex belongs entirely inside marriage. I believe that sex outside marriage is a sin, but I would never set out to criminalize sex outside marriage for other people.
Ian, would you like to come in there?
Yeah, I would like to come in, and frankly, we've just heard absolute nonsense. I mean, Kate's influence on any of these issues would be the same as the other 129 MSPs in Parliament. She would have one vote. And if it's a conscience issue, as it is, then clearly there's going to be no whipping by any party involved in it, or there's no need for whipping, let's put it that way. But I mean, I think the important factor here is when Kate got attacked, and she was attacked by the woke element in the Scottish society, in the SNP, where it's very predominant at the moment. She was a unifying candidate because she brought every religion together. It was condemned by our own church. It was condemned by the Catholic Church. It was condemned by the Muslim churches in Scotland, who all came out and said it was ridiculous.
Let me bring in the statement issued by the Scottish Association of Mosques. Now, they say, the tone of the debate around religious beliefs in the context of the SNP leadership race is deeply concerning. Some of those beliefs in question are beliefs that Muslims also share. We believe marriage is a sacred institution and that it should be between a man and a woman. And they go on to say, it's refreshing to hear a political leader talk about their religious values and principles in an open and transparent way. And it's been disappointing, however, to hear from some quarters that holding and or expressing religious values deem an individual as unfit for leadership. So, Mohammed, I mean, the Scottish Association of Mosques there supports her right to not just hold those beliefs, but to express them as well. Do you not accept that that's the case?
I have no objection. I have no objection to Kate Forbes expressing her views. What I object to is her seeking to impose her views on other people by the way that she chooses to vote in Parliament. And that vote based entirely on her religious beliefs.
In the interview on the 20th of February, where all this came to light, she said, Marriage being between a man and a woman, that is what I practice, but I will not roll back on any rights that already exist in Scotland. So it doesn't look like she's going to impose. It doesn't look like she's going to impose her views on anyone.
That's fine, but she also went on to say in that same interview she would not have voted for it had she been in Parliament at that time. And that is my cause for being unhappy with her. I'm not saying she can't be a candidate, but I would never support her for office.
There was plenty of people in Scotland weren't happy with that vote when it came. She would, you know, I mean, you'd be right if 100% of people supported your view, but you know, nothing close to that, not even close to 50% probably support that view. So she's entitled to vote as she thinks fit. And this whole thing's ridiculous because she wasn't even in Parliament when this was discussed. This is a hypothetical argument. What might have happened if she'd been elected at that time?
Judith Duffy, you've interviewed her a number of times, and you know, in recent weeks and months, she's tried to allay anybody's concerns that she would roll back their rights. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the kind of views here reflect the kind of different views that are within the SNP membership and kind of wider voters about what they think of Kate Forbes' approach. So there's certainly some that are really concerned that about her views, and they're concerned that the kind of socially liberal policies that the SNP have been pursuing in years could be at risk if she becomes First Minister, that there's a danger that the party will kind of go to the right. But then I've heard from other people as well that are, you know, very supportive of her, that kind of either they say, well, they think her honesty in this issue is really refreshing, and she very much emphasises that she is able to separate the personal from the political, and so there's people that I've spoken to that have said, well, you know, that's acceptable, and they think that's the way they can go. So I think there really is a kind of mix of issues here, and it comes down to whether people, you know, really believe that she is able to separate that personal from the political. And you know, when I interviewed her, the debate had been rumbling on for a few weeks, and she was really, I think, getting a sense of getting quite frustrated about answering these questions all the time, but very emphatic that she was saying, you know, she's been in government for some time, and this is how she's operated. So that was her argument on it.
Let's move on to Humza Yousaf now. Mohammed Amin, do you think that Humza Yousaf has made a better job of steering and navigating this difficult path of having faith but also being in secular politics?
Yes, I will answer that question in a moment. But first of all, I want to say I have no views about who should be the First Minister of Scotland. That's a matter for the Scottish people. But I do believe that Humza Yousaf has got the correct balance about having personal religious views, because he's also a Muslim, and not seeking to impose those religious views on other people. If I want to give you another example, Sadiq Khan, now Mayor of London, used to be an MP. And when he was a Labour MP, he's a Muslim as well, he voted in favour of equal civil marriage from memory. I think he received death threats. But that is the right approach. You have your own religious beliefs. They govern how you live your life. You do not seek to impose those religious beliefs on other people.
Let me ask you, Judith, about the media, as you are a journalist. Down here in England, I've heard on LBC a number of journalists who have said that Kate Forbes' positions, multiple positions actually, are hateful and that she has no business running for office. And I've noticed that they haven't really put the same spotlight on Humza Yousaf. For example, in the recent debate, Ian Dale said to Kate Forbes, "Do you think I'm a sinner?"
Do you personally consider that I'm a sinner?
Well, I consider you as much of a sinner as I consider myself to be a sinner. We are both equal.
He didn't then go on ask Humza Yousaf the same question. Do you think the media is unduly unfair on Kate Forbes?
Well, I think certainly, you know, the media need to scrutinise the position of each of the candidates and ask them their opinions on you know, subjects which they think will be of interest to the voters. So yeah, and I think Kate Forbes was under a lot of focus in the first weeks because you know, she'd maybe had expressed her views before in these subjects a bit, and so as a person running for First Minister, then obviously she was going to come under more scrutiny. But I certainly think, you know, there have been other questions asked of the other candidates as well, but they just maybe haven't made quite as many headlines as Kate Forbes has.
Yeah. Ian, if I can ask you a question about the Gender Recognition Reform Bill. Was it that brought down Nicola Sturgeon? And could you explain what that bill attempted to achieve?
Well, I think the problem isn't so much with the gender recognition itself. I think it's with the self-ID element of it, where effectively, someone can say they're changing gender just on their own say-so. And of course, that very quickly run into major problems with no sooner had it passed than we had Isla Bryden, which is the case in Scotland, where a transgender woman was placed in a women's prison. And, it became a huge problem. The laws and regulations get quickly reviewed, and she or he, whatever you want to call her, was moved to a male prison to serve out their sentence. There's no doubt it's not made the SNP more popular. I mean, something like 70% of Scots are opposed to these changes. It's a problem that perhaps is not yet finished. The interesting thing, of course, is that Labour, the Lib Dems and the Greens also share the SNP's position on this. But it led to a rebellion within the SNP, the first one I think there's been in many, many years, and a number of SNP MSPs on principle, on belief, voted against it, including one of the leadership candidates, Ash Regan. So, it's no doubt not helped the SNP's position.
Yeah, and Kate Forbes is saying about it that a rapist cannot be a woman, therefore my straight answer is Isla Brighton, the person you referred to there, is a man. She goes on to say, I believe that a trans woman is a biological male who identifies as a woman. Judith Duffy, is that what most Scots believe, or are they more aligned with the official SNP platform?
Well, again, I think it depends very much who you speak to. This issue has caused huge controversy, and there's no doubt that it's had a kind of impact on the SNP. So I think there's a certain almost generational issue in this as well. I think quite a lot of young people are more supportive of the gender reform than older generations. That's the kind of impression I get. So yeah, I mean, it's an issue that's caused controversy. There were recent figures out which showed a kind of drop in membership of the SNP. And some people have attributed this to unhappiness with the gender reform legislation. The SNP have said, it's down to things like cost of living crisis and a kind of natural drop-off in membership. So that's their explanation for what has been quite a significant drop. But I think this is certainly one issue which obviously has caused the SNP a lot of problems in recent months. Yeah. Although having said that, the legislation was passed by Holyrood, so it has been, it has gone through Holyrood in that process at the same time.
Coming in.
There's a delicious irony here, in so much as Humza Yousaf on the STV debate actually questioned Isla Bryden and said she wasn't really a trans woman, she was playing the system. And of course, if you read Humza Yousaf's own hate crime bill, or indeed the code of conduct within the SNP, he breached both of them. That's a criminal offence under his hate crime bill to say that. And there's the author of it on TV committing the crime.
We're coming to the end of the programme, and I'd like to just look at whether or not this vote actually is democratic, because rather like the position with the Tory party, this is not a nationwide vote. This is a vote amongst party members of the Scottish National Party. So, Ian Lawson, do you think there's a democratic deficit here?
It's absolutely massive. I mean, we don't know how many SNP members there are. I mean, with the party president at the weekend saying he had no idea of the figures.
I think it's in the region of, is it 72,000 ballots they've sent out?
Well, that's what they're saying. Well, they actually sent out 78, and then had to admit that they only had 72,000 members. So everyone's wondering where this extra 6,000 ballots came from. I don't believe the 72,000. I think it's much lower than that. I think they've got real problems, and I think they're disguising them even at this stage.
Judith Duffy, just finally, do you think this leadership contest lacks democratic credentials?
Well, the argument that the SNP put forward and the difference between this and the Conservative leadership contest last year was is that the Scottish Parliament will vote on who will be the First Minister. So it'll be SNP members that vote for the new leader, and then it'll be MSPs that vote for the First Minister. So of course that vote is likely to go through, given that the SNP have the number of MSPs they have in Parliament, and they would obviously hope to win the backing of the Greens with that as well. So that's the argument they put through. On another issue, I'm not sure if MD would really want another election at this time. So I guess that's a kind of another issue to consider. But yeah, that's what they say is a key difference as to why it's different from the Westminster election.
Judith Duffy, Mohammed Amin and Ian Lawson, thank you all very much for your contributions to the Nexus today. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. If you want to see this or any of our previous episodes, do go to our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus TRT World. Until next week then, goodbye.